record. And one thing that I want to share before we dive into Miss Krista's real presentation is Krista has decided to give Holly Happy Hour a facelift and is making a lot of new features. So just be on the lookout for some changes that are incredibly positive. And, you know, everything is always better when we get Krista involved in our projects. So really pumped up about that. So most of you already know Krista, but for those of you that don't, Krista is one of my favorite humans on the entire planet, and also Sarah's favorite human too, and also one of the smartest, most creative people that I know. And she is professionally, she's a vice president of marketing for BP3 Global, which is a global software and consulting company based in Austin. And I call her the master of effectiveness and efficiency. Krista and I met through our service in the Junior League of Austin, and I think of her as a philanthropist, and like I already mentioned, one of the most creative and brilliant people that I know. She's also the friend that I have that if I have a horrible idea, she's game and ready to go on board, even as silly as flying to Miami for less than 24 hours to go to Madonna concert. So I love her for all of these reasons, but this is really random. So Krista and Austin and my husband and I were in our car in a group going to a party like before COVID hit, clearly. And we got the birthday girl a lemon tree. It was Krista's idea. And then she said something like, yeah, I think I'm gonna get some bees. And then we're at the party and we never had the conversation again. And then all of a sudden on her Instagram, were these really fascinating pictures of her bees and her bee suit. And she's talking about the queen and all of these things. And I thought, wow, I have no idea what this is all about. I didn't even know our friend Leslie Moore, who's on this Zoom, has bees as well. I want to know more. And I know if I have these questions, I bet you do as well. So Krista and I did prepare some questions, but at the same time, this is meant to be collaborative and a conversation. So feel free to take yourself off mute, ask questions, use the chat box. I mean, this is happy hour, so we want to have fun. And so with that, let's dive in.
There's Krista.
Becky. My name is Krista. If you put it on speaker view, you can primarily just see Krista, which is what we want. Krista, what was the catalyst for you jumping into beekeeping?
Well, so about a year ago, Austin and I closed on a ranch out in Lano, Texas, and that originally, about 2 years ago, we started thinking, well, how can we have a ranch? How can we make a ranch work financially? And one of the things that I started looking into a lot was an agricultural exemption. And so from the agricultural exemption side is how I started thinking, okay, well, bees don't require daily maintenance. They don't require a lot of infrastructure. So I can put bees out on the property to get our ag exemption. About 7-9 months ago, we figured out that we didn't actually need the bees for our ag exemption, but I wanted, at that point, I was so bought into bees and beekeeping that I was going to have them. And Austin said I could have them. So we went ahead with the plan.
Okay, so it makes total sense of going for the ag exemption and thinking through what requires little maintenance. But how did you even get to bees? I don't know if that would even occur to me.
So, well, we were talking about you can have like grasslands and hay, and that requires less maintenance, but it requires a lot of infrastructure and water, and then you have to bale and things like that. So we were looking for like low maintenance agricultural exemption, and the bees came up as a search. When you search ag exemptions in Texas, bees come up.
That's really cool. So what type of research did you have to do before? And as you were doing that research, what were your biggest questions?
So first of all, I was worried about what it actually took to raise bees. And so I took a bunch of classes through Two Hives Honey down here in Austin. So Two Hives does a bunch of in-person classes. She also does a lot of virtual classes. And Tara knows everything about bees and everything about beekeeping. And she does a lot of beginner-facing classes. So I started there, and then once I actually got the bees, I started doing a lot more YouTube searches, and kind of there's this whole community of people that actually keep bees and are amateur beekeepers, and so they post on YouTube all the time. So it's a great resource, and they'll tell you what the problems could be and how to spot them and things like that. So
That's really cool. So what type of where did you actually buy your bees?
yeah, so there were a lot of places recommended to us to buy our bees, and we did, I did some of my own research, and then I actually asked Leslie where she got hers, and she got hers from the same place I ended up getting mine, which is Bee Weavers, which is down close to College Station. So originally Bee Weavers, so every hive comes with a queen and a bunch of bees on racks. So they're called nooks. They're just almost a half hive. So there's 5 racks of almost honey plus a queen bee inside of it. And so a regular like size hive is 10 different racks. So Bee Weaver sells these, and they also sell like boxes of bees. So just literally a box full of bees that you flip over and shake into a hive that don't have any frames. I started with the hives that had frames so that they would get started a little bit faster and be a little bit more acclimated to the climate. And that's a good way to get started. And originally it's a little bit more expensive, but it's a good way to start. So I went to Bee Weavers. Originally before COVID, they were supposed to bring them like down the street from my house in Oak Hill. With COVID, they ended up not doing that. So my dad, who is my co-beekeeper, got in the truck with me and drove 4 hours to Bee Weavers, or 3.5 hours to Bee Weavers, and then 4.5 hours to Llano to install them. We installed them in about 2 hours. And so the total day was like 12 hours of sunup to sundown beekeeping work with major rainstorms through the Houston area.
The moral of the story is if we have a big project, we need to enlist your dad.
Yes, my father is the best at large projects and just anything. He's kind of like me in the way that if you have a bad idea, you call him and he'll say, yeah, let's get started.
This is a really good thing to know. Now, all jokes aside, you mentioned that you bought the hives, and my understanding is the racks were part of those hives.
Yep.
What other type of equipment did you need to get in order to make this happen?
Yeah, so I have a spreadsheet, of course, that keeps my end-to-end what I have invested in the bees and what different pieces I have, so that whenever I get asked this question, I'm like, here's the spreadsheet. So I spent about $2,500. I have 4 hives. A lot of people start with 1, but it was recommended to me to start with 4 because they share a lot of resources, which is true. So the most expensive pieces are the actual hive boxes, and then the beekeeper suit. So a nice beekeeper suit. So we bought 4 hive boxes, which are each 3 boxes tall. There's a ton of there's 10 racks in each one of those. Then you have to have the smoker, the suit, the actual bees, the queens, which I've had to requeen a hive, which is an extra $50. The setup, so where they live is actually on 4x4s, and I lifted them off the ground a little bit, and then we fenced them in so animals couldn't get to them. So the whole setup probably ran me close to $3,000 for 4 hives.
So I'm trying to pull up, I know they're on your Instagram, but is there a way, I'm looking on your Facebook, are there some ways that we could show people what this actually looks like as we're talking about hive boxes?
Let me pull up a photo and I will share my screen.
Well, so that answers the next question, was about the actual capital investment. So I'm giving you screen share. Hang on just a second. Thanks for bearing with us, y'all, about that screen share, or as we do this, because I want to make sure you can see what she's talking about. There you go. Well, and so while you're, there you go.
Yeah. So this is one of our hive boxes. And then, so this is just stacked 1 high right now. So there are 10 frames, which I'll show you a frame in just a second. There are 10 frames of bees inside of these hive boxes. And we have 4 of these hive boxes out at the ranch. And you can see like the wildflowers in the background and the fencing that we put up to keep the deer and hogs out of there. So this is a picture of an entrance reducer. So there's the entrance, but you can't really see it because it's covered with bees. About 2 weeks after we installed the bees, we actually removed this entrance reducer and made it a larger entrance reducer so that they could have more access to the hive and not have to wait so long. And this is what a rack of bees looks like. So it's all drawn comb. Let me see if I have a further. So this is the inside of a hive. When you open up that top, there are these different racks, and each rack is 2 sides of honeycomb, which they'll either have brood, which is bee babies, or honey inside of it. So this picture here shows some really good brood. So this is capped brood, and then some of this, you can kind of see a larva right there. So this is uncapped brood, which means that they have not finished putting royal jelly in to feed the larva as it grows. When they cap it, it means that it is ready to grow and become a full bee. These are super weird, but all of this is wax, just like field beeswax candles and things. They make that, they produce it out of after eating enough nectar. So kind of a bad picture. Sorry, I didn't plan on the pictures, but here's some pictures.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, there's a closed box, and then this is what it's looked like when it's open. And now each one of these has another box just the same size on top of it. And then when you get to the honey making point, you put a 3rd box on top, and that's called a honey super. And you put between the honey super and the bottom 2 boxes, you'll put a queen excluder so that she can't lay eggs in the honey super, which means it's just honey, no eggs.
So in the honey super, how does it actually work then? For lack of a better way to ask that.
Yeah, so they will go and they will create the wax. So they'll create these pieces of comb, so the whole comb, and it'll go straight down, and it is incredible to watch them create perfectly octagonal pieces of beeswax. And then they go, and honey is actually just bee vomit. So they go, they pull nectar from flowers or from other sources, and they come back with water and nectar in their mouths. Or in their bodies, they'll actually vomit it into one of these little holes. Their legs will be covered in pollen and things, which flavors the honey and gives it some good stuff. And then they'll actually cap it over like they cap this, but they cap it over with like a more clear wax. And that is how they actually show you that the honey is ready. It's less water now. So it's a mixture of nectar and water. And then as the water evaporates, when it gets to 85% honey, it is capped over, and that is how we know.
That's really, really cool. So as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the pictures. So the bees can fly away. So what attracts them to stay at your site?
So all the bees that are part of your hive have essentially the same mother. So you only have one queen bee. She lays all the eggs, and then that mother keeps the hive together. So when the hive will stay as long as they have enough natural resources and the queen is still laying. So if there's a problem with the queen, the bees will start to leave, and you'll start to see a lot of dead bees around, which is how, and I mentioned at the beginning before we started recording, I actually had to re-queen one of my hives, which was, you get a new queen. She comes in a queen box, which has a piece of sugar in it, and a couple of templates with her. And you put her inside the hive, and she eats from the inside of the box through the sugar, and they eat from the outside through the sugar. And then by the time they meet, they've accepted her pheromones, and they follow her, and they know now where their hive is because it smells like them.
That is so cool. Any more questions on that part before we move on to the next questions?
I'll just add, because I had to do this year with my hive that's 3 years old. My queen had stopped laying, and my bees had gotten kind of aggressive. And so I got them the queen was still there, so they hadn't left yet. So I had to actually kill the queen, and you do that a couple of days before you put a new queen in. So then I put a new queen in, like Krista was talking about, that she requeened. And you just leave her in there for a couple of days. And then the next time I went out there, she was part of it. I could see that she was laying. The bees had all calmed down. They were all chill and just like happy to have a new leader. So it's crazy how they just take that on with the pheromones.
So y'all, how do you distinguish the queen between the other bees?
So I was trying to find a picture of a queen, but I don't think I have one on here. So my queens actually have dots on them because I purchased them from bee weavers. So the queens each have like a distinguishing dot, and they're also a lot longer than a regular bee. So you can kind of see them, and I know I have a picture of a queen somewhere, but you can kind of see that she's longer. She moves around a little bit different, and they kind of make a way for her. And then she has a painted dot on her. So people take a paint pen to their queen bees to distinguish them and be able to find them more easily.
That sounds like a dangerous job, paint penning the bee. So what is in the ongoing care? What does that entail?
So during the spring, and Leslie's a little bit more experienced in this, but during the spring, I go out there every 2 weeks and check on them and just kind of look at how they're progressing and then give them what they need. So 2 weeks ago, I went out there and gave them a new bucket of fresh water, some sugar water, and then these things called pollen patties, which help them progress a little bit faster. Some people don't feed their bees. I feed my bees because I don't want them to leave. Leaving is called a swarm, and bees swarm a lot, and I'm terrified of that. I'm sure Leslie is as well. But it's kind of like you look and make sure that the queen is still alive and she's still laying. There's no signs of bugs, mites, spiders, ants get in hives all the time. So you try and protect them against that kind of stuff. And then check to make sure that the queen is laying and that you have a lot of fresh brood and a lot of honey. And then as the summer progresses and they stop making so much honey and into the fall and winter time frame, you want to make sure that they have enough food to last through the entire winter. Because essentially we won't open our hives from mid-fall through early spring.
So when you say you won't open them, you'll give them all the food they need for those 4 or 5 months at one time?
They've made they eat honey. So bees survive off of honey. And so they will have made enough honey for themselves to last through the winter, hopefully.
Okay, and then you supplying the extra food that you've been doing this spring is basically responsible beekeeping so they don't swarm.
Well, it's also new. They're new hives, so we want to make sure that they stay.
They're having to, it takes a lot of energy for a bee to make the honeycomb. So while they're building all of that, oftentimes they're using more energy than they can get by harvesting from the wildflowers. Yeah. So like my hive that I established 3 years ago, I haven't fed it since the first year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, so then clearly you can't put out bug poisoning because you'd kill your bees. So how do you protect them against spiders and other insects or rodents?
Ants hate cinnamon.
Oh.
So we put cinnamon on the top of our hives to make sure that ants don't come in. And then I elevate my hives, and I don't know how Leslie is set up, but my hives are on planks so that I can see if there's any bugs or disturbance. The more of the critters come in the winter because beehives are kept at like a constant 70, 72 degrees, the bees bees have different jobs. And one of the jobs for the bees is actually keeping the hive warm or cool by flapping their wings. So they'll go and they'll cool it off from the outside, or they'll sit in the middle and get really hot to heat the rest of the hive. And so over the fall and winter time frame, a lot of critters might enter to stay warm or be part of the hive. But the bees also keep things out in general.
They sting them.
Yeah.
They work to remove pests as well.
So if it's, say there's a hard freeze, do they keep each other warm enough where you don't have to have any concerns around that?
Yeah. And in Asia, the Asian bees, that's actually how they kill those murder hornets that we heard about at the beginning of COVID, is they actually get together and they swarm a murder hornet that's coming towards them. If they hear it, they create a ball of heat to raise their internal temperature and the murder hornet's internal temperature until the murder hornet dies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
American bees are not adapted to that yet, but Asian bees are.
So if we have more murder hornets coming this way, our bees might start to be that way.
Exactly. They might adapt. Yeah.
I'm with you, Anne. That is the coolest thing I've ever heard. So what has been your biggest surprise as a beekeeper?
Oh, every time you go out there, it's something different. And I'd like to hear Leslie's answer on this as well, because it's every time you go out there, there is something different to take care of. Like, I went out there one time and I saw the first a mite inside of my beehives. And I was like, how did a mite find my hive? And so, you have your hive traps, and it's every time the surprises are every time you go out there, there's a surprise.
Leslie, what were you going to add?
I agree with that. And that's the thing that's kind of hard for me, because my personality is very know-it-all, and then I don't know it all, and I'm like, new problem. And so I often go out, see what the problem is, have to come back in, research what to do, and then go out and fix it. Yeah. And the thing that amazes me, I so enjoy watching them work when I'm out there. And they do all have different jobs. Like, there's ones at the front door guarding it. There's ones that are coming in with the pollen on their legs. And there's ones that are attending to the queen, and they're doing all their little jobs. And they do work to keep their own hive clean. And one of my favorite things is are those the mites, the little beetles that get in there?
Yep.
Wax beetles.
Yeah.
So you'll see them like trying to sting a wax beetle if they see one. But the thing I have to get rid of them is basically looks like those handy wipes that are like sort of disposable washcloths that you use in the kitchen. And you put one of those in there and you like stick it under one of the frames, under one of the racks. And the bees work really hard to get rid of it. And when they do that, they make it all fuzzy, and then the beetles get caught in it. So there's like a completely like chemical free way to get rid of it. But the bees are so mad that this thing is in there that they fuzz it all up and it catches the beetles. So I always enjoy seeing how many beetles they've caught.
Yeah.
I like how hard they work. I think that's a really cool learning lesson, that they all have their jobs, they stay in their lanes.
Yeah.
If we could be so good at that ourselves, that'd be great.
Well, most of the bees, all the bees that are inside my hives and the bees that actually make the honey are women. So it makes a lot of sense.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I'll show you a picture here. What Leslie mentioned, pollen. So these are called pollen pants, and it's this little amount of pollen that gets on their legs. And so when they go, and I think you can see some here, their legs will have like orange masses on them or yellow masses on them, and they're just like, it's full of pollen. And that's why people say, and people always are really surprised here, like honey is very good for your allergies, and people don't really put two and two together. It's because they're constantly pulling all of the environmental pollens and nectar into the hive and into the honey. So you're getting small doses of that pollen and small doses of those allergens, essentially. So if you have a mesquite allergy or an allergy to grass and things like that, taking a little bit of honey is really good for, and this is not for, I'm not prescribing this to anyone, but in general, people say that taking honey in is really good for allergies, and that's because it mixes, this pollen mixes with the honey.
That was actually one of my questions, so thank you for that.
Oh, sorry.
No, I'm excited that it flowed nicely. Well, so along the same lines of, you know, what are the surprises? Have you had any scary moments?
Yeah, so I've had a couple. So the first day we got our bees and we were putting them in, my dad dropped a frame. And the bees are already very agitated. They've been moved from a nice cozy box into a new box, and they don't know why this new box exists. Dropping a frame is pretty much the worst thing that can happen on that day. So my dad accidentally dropped a frame. It hit the ground. We picked it up. The frame was fine. The comb was fine, but the bees had swarmed. They were everywhere. And I looked down at his shoe, and he was wearing these black shoes, and it was covered in bees. So I could not see his shoe at all. All I saw were little bees. So I was like, all right, you need to step away. We need to shake your shoe, slowly step backwards and shake your foot. So when bees swarm, they connect with one another. And so all you have to do is really shake them really hard, and they'll just fall off in a clump. Yeah.
It's good that you knew that ahead of time.
You learn a lot just trying, but you also learn that they're not that fragile. So it's good. We've had a couple. Austin did get stung. We went out there one time, and we weren't even opening the hives yet. We weren't really doing much. We were just changing out the sugar water, and Austin kind of walked out of the apiary where the bees are, and there was a bee following him, and he went like this, and it stung him right above the ear, and he wasn't very happy about that. So it's not a great moment when you get stung. I got stung the same day by the same hive, by the way.
So what makes one hive more aggressive than the other? Or is it just a circumstance?
There are a couple things. That day we had gone out there really late in the afternoon, so it was really hot. And they don't love people coming in when they're not fully there. They also don't love people going in when they're fully there. So bees will be aggressive if it's raining outside and they can't leave. Bees will be aggressive if it's particularly cloudy. To Leslie's point, bees get aggressive when the hive is slowing down or when their queen is slowing down. They might have a nature of being aggressive. Some beekeepers say that they've changed out queens because the queen was laying aggressive bees. They can be aggressive because you didn't spend enough time to use a smoker to make them think that they need to be in their hive. That they can be aggressive if you didn't give them enough time with the smoke. So there are a lot of different reasons.
Leslie, do you have a scary story for us?
Oh yeah.
I don't know if it's scary, but it was bad beekeeping, and Jonathan thought it was amusing. When I was working with them, it took me a long time. Like, I've wanted a new queen for like 6 months, and you have to wait for the summertime is when they breed. And so I had just gotten it in June, and it took a lot of fiddling around, and I had to change out some frames, and I had ants ended up getting in there. So then I had to go learn about that and get this cinnamon and go back and all this. And so I'd been working them for a long time, and they were getting more and more pissed. And at one point they were super mad. And so I just walked away. And if I walk out of my area, Jonathan can see me from his office. So I stood there for a long time. And then finally all of the bees quit swarming around me. And I went back inside, and he's like, you came out and there were millions of bees around you. You were just covered in bees. It was hilarious. And I was like, that's not funny. That's bad beekeeping. but thanks. So like, I just had them open too long, and I was doing too much, and they got mad. So yeah.
So my biggest takeaway from that is that you need to be incredibly calm and cool if you're in beekeeping, because someone like me would like panic and make them more angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go slow, and you have to go slow, but you also have to move quickly and know what you're doing before you go in there.
Do you talk to your bees, Krista?
Constantly. Like, everyone's okay. Everything's fine. Nothing is
I'm like,
here.
hey ladies, how are you doing today? And I didn't realize I did it until Jonathan was out in the yard one day, and he's like, what are you talking to the bees about? And I'm like, I don't know. Am I?
Well, okay, so that leads to a question that I had. Do they recognize you? Like, do you have a relationship with them?
No.
So.
I would say no. I don't think I think they recognize you as the like scary monster who comes and opens their house in a big white suit. But in general, at first when we got them, I was going to name the bees, and I even like solicited my coworkers and said like, what should I name my bees? And I was going to name the queens. So we have 4 queens, and finally I got down to like, no, because I'm just going to like get emotionally attached to them and have to replace them at some point. They are insects, like.
You don't want to squish Gertrude.
Exactly.
It's like
Kill my
queen.
queen.
Oh my gosh, I love it. So y'all, what is the biggest learning lesson that you've had from keeping bees?
Patience is a virtue. I mean, I'm not a very patient person. I hate waiting on things. So with bees, there's a lot of waiting. And Kimberly, yes, I am always in a bee suit. I decided not to wear the full suit and just wore the top and not jeans, or not the bottom one time. And I ended up getting stung through my jeans.
Oh.
Not great, not a great moment.
So Leslie, we have to ask you the same question. What's your biggest learning lesson?
So mine is, it's funny how it brings out like a personality trait in you that's that big. Mine is that I really do like to know everything. And you spend so little time interacting with them, and every second that you're there is important. And it's been hard for me to have to process faster than I normally process and figure out what's happening. If it's something I've never seen before, but I have to figure it out then. Otherwise, something bad could happen to that investment of time and money and all of the 50,000 insects that are out there and all of that. So I've had to do a little more like quick plunging than I normally like to do.
So you just said the number 50,000. How many bees do both of you have?
So a full hive is probably about 20 to 30,000 bees.
I was seeing the numbers I've heard before, like 40 to 50,000.
Yeah, so I think like if you have 2 super, or if you have 2 medium or large hive boxes, you can get up to 50,000. So, I mean, with 4 hives, I'm looking at 200,000 right now. So I numbered my hives 1, 2, 3, and 4, and like I reference them to Leslie on a regular basis. I'm like, well, hive 2. So today I was in hive 2, and hive 2 was actually looking like a smaller population, whereas hive 3, I would say easily has 40 or 50,000 bees in it. So I guess it ranges, and there's probably an average somewhere. I've heard 20 to 40, but I'm not counting. I don't have that kind of time.
Is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, that's a lot of names.
Yeah. No wonder you didn't name your bees other than killing your queen. So the last question, what do people normally ask you when you tell them that you're keeping bees that we have not asked you?
Oh.
Can I have some honey?
Yeah. When do I get my honey? Like I have a huge family who's expecting jars of honey. So I got very small jars. My sister switched to a glass jar baby food specifically to give me small jars so I can get enough honey this year.
As strategic as you are.
Well, there was a lot of planning in this. And then, yeah, most people ask, when will you get honey? Can I have honey? And why? Why would you do this?
Well, and then Rico just asked a great question. Does the color of the hive matter?
So mine are wax. Mine are beeswax rubbed. So they have a scent to them, if you will, and they're waterproofed that way. A lot of Texas beekeepers keep them white to keep them cool. Mine get afternoon shade, or like a light afternoon shade. I've heard it doesn't matter, and then I've heard it does. My niece actually decorated the exterior of some of mine, so she went up, like we made the boxes and she painted them. Leslie, do you have white, or what color are your bee boxes?
I have one set that's natural and one set that's white. And from what I've seen, I've never like researched what colors are appropriate, but they all seem to be light colors that that are available. And bees have like that. That's the reason that bee suits are white too. Like bees don't like dark colors, but I don't know. Like I don't know if they would want to come home to, you know, a navy blue house. In addition to the cooling aspect, but like even in colder climates, I've noticed that most hives are white or pale yellow or lilac or, you know, like some color like that.
I've seen a lot of rainbow hives.
Yeah.
People will paint the whole box purple and the next box yellow and then just keep going up. So
Yeah.
That's a cool question. Anybody else? I mean, this is our chance to know all the things.
well, I want to tell you guys, Emily Collins is on here, and bees are the state pollinator because of Emily. When she was interning in the state house, she drafted the bill to make bees the state pollinator of Texas, and it passed, and they are now the state pollinator of Texas. So Emily Collins right there is responsible for making bees the state pollinator of Texas.
Thank you.
I thought that was the most fun fact that I got out of it.
Hey, credit the idea. There's a man called the Bee Czar, and I actually have been meaning to ask if you know him, but he keeps bees on the top of the W Hotel. And it was his idea, but we did help get it through. There was not a lot of pushback because everybody loves bees.
I do not know the Bee Czar, but now I'm going to have to go find him.
Yeah, oh my gosh, walking him through the state capitol, he's a character. People were like, what is he wearing?
What was he wearing?
He had like this like vest on, and he's got like super hair, and it's like colored. And he had bees all over his outfit. He was super cool.
Leslie, I think we have a new happy hour friend.
Yeah,
I think so. Definitely.
About this, Emily. How did this come to your office, and what was the why behind it?
Like the Bee Czar, I forget what organization he's with, but he calls himself the Bee Czar. You know, it's like a lot of resolutions. People just bring them to their representative, and I worked for the representative for Austin and his area in particular. And so they bring them to you, and then you just go ahead and do them. And my representative thought it was a cool idea. And, you know, it was fun. They do urban beekeeping. I feel like that's part of the name of the organization, but I don't know.
Urban beekeeping is really big.
Well, okay, yeah, so urban beekeeping, I mean, I was just thinking about this. I would be a little fearful about having bees because I'm allergic to bee stings. But that being said, if I wanted them in my backyard, but I don't have wildflowers the way Leslie does in her backyard, or you have them at their ranch, how do they keep them in an urban space?
The city of Austin has a lot of regulations. So first, you have to check with your HOA. HOAs generally have a lot of regulations on beekeeping, but the city of Austin also has like a area, and I think don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure you have to have a half acre, either a quarter or a half acre in the city of Austin. And then it has to be at least 6 feet away from a fence. And then you have to put up some sort of flight path shield. So a flight path shield means that your apiary, so where you keep the hives, has to have essentially bushes or something to make them fly up instead of flying over. I know my parents live down, they just bought a house down in South Austin, and I know that there is a beekeeper around them because their pool is frequented by bees. And so I see a lot of bees and beekeeper or people who might be beekeepers around them. So
I'm going to look at bees a little bit differently as Krista's pets or Leslie. Any other questions before we pop off? I know we've gone a little bit over, but this was incredibly fascinating.
There's pictures of the Bee Czar on online. You just do a Google of him.
Show us. Rico, share your screen.
He's an interesting character, to say the least.
yeah,
Rico, can we go play Pac-Man at your house?
Emily sent us this picture. So
Oh,
there's the bee car.
Thank you.
He's in a full bee suit.
He's legit.
Yeah.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Krista, great information. Leslie, you always provide really cool nuggets, so I'm glad that y'all could do this together. And like I said, Krista has put a facelift on Holly Happy Hours, so be on the lookout for some really cool things down the road. And I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.